Hello, good evening, and welcome to Open Window. Tonight's program includes a medical story concerned with handicapped children and the type of toys that have been developed specially for them. And on a similar theme, there's an item which shows the advances of technology, or should I say, bioengineering. Still within the medical page, a quick look at a different method of treating cancer, one that was described by the practicing physician as a breakthrough to the tip of the iceberg. Next, we take a look at language mapping, how and where the brain responds to input. Then we turn to food, everyone's favorite subject. But if you're one of those people who really like your food piled up high on top of your plate, then you'll have to get a smaller plate to fit the bill. And to end with, on tonight's Open Window, a leapfrog contest. But now, getting down to business, let me introduce the first item on tonight's program. When is Italy not in Europe? When it's in New York for the first International Festival of Arts, something a little similar to the Edinburgh Festival in Britain. At the gathering, many young artists from around the world came to this cosmopolitan city to show off the best of their creative talents. And the talents didn't just include music, acting or singing, but also a gondola trip around New York Harbor.
This weekend in New York City, the American Ballet Theater was rehearsing for the world premiere of Clark Tippett's ballet, a ballet that uniquely combines the grace of dance with the music of a barbershop quartet.
I wish I had my own gal back again. I miss her more than ever now.
On the Hudson River, on a picture-perfect day, Italian gondoliers got their first view of New York City's skyline. New York, you see, was getting ready for the opening of its first International Festival of the Arts, a festival that will feature 350 events from 30 nations. New York City Mayor Ed Koch was on hand for the festival's welcoming ceremony.
We have here the sons and daughters of every nation in the world. So who better to view the talent of the whole world? And that is why we want all of the nations that can possibly send their best to send them to New York City.
Italy sent their best, Venetian gondoliers, and they were the stars of the festival's welcoming ceremony. U.S. Ambassador to Italy, Maxwell Rabb, spoke of the strong ties between the two countries.
Italy and the United States have really reached the highest point of friendship in their entire history. And that particular period of closeness is right now.
The gondolas may have arrived from Venice by airplane, but their 120-kilometer trip down the Hudson River from Poughkeepsie, New York to the South Street Seaport was done strictly through manpower.
For most of the gondoliers, it was their first trip to America, their first look at our country's Statue of Liberty.
We never saw, nobody of us has never seen the statue before, and that's for us is something fantastic.
For Francesco Gambini, the sight of New York City's skyscrapers was a sight that allowed for a moment of reflection.
I could believe it was a real thing. No? I don't think that a person can stay in these buildings. They are too big to contain little persons.
To watch the gondolas move swiftly across the river was almost like watching a ballet. Perfectly timed movements, combined with the grace and ease of practiced muscles, sent the gondolas gliding gracefully over the water. Their arrival at their final destination in New York City, the South Street Seaport, was announced with a water display, with, of course, the colors of Italy. Closer to the pier, the gondolas rode in gracefully and were met with cheers and curiosity. Even Mayor Koch couldn't resist and had to have a ride for himself. And for the gondoliers, after 2 days on the Hudson River, they could now discover New York by foot and extend an invitation of their own.
Spero di poter venire negli Stati Uniti con la mia famiglia e vedere tutte queste belle cose che ci sono qui. E spero che molti americani vengano a Venezia a vedere la mia città.
Francesco says that he hopes his journey to New York will encourage Americans to come see the sights of his country. And just maybe that is what an international festival of the arts is all about.
Tonight's medical reports are varied, but two of them have a similar theme in common. I'll be dealing with them one at a time. A handicap of any kind can be very limiting to the person involved, and this is especially true if the person is a child with, say, paralysis, for instance. Imagine how hard it would be for a handicapped child to play with normal toys. Hence the idea of toys developed for the handicapped. And since these can be very expensive for the parents, a toy lending library is the answer.
Lecotech is a resource center filled with toys with a very special reason. They're there to help children with handicaps and disabilities to learn how to play.
Play is a child's work. That's how they learn the rules and the roles of society.
Good job. Oh.
The concept is simple. A leader works with the parent and the child one session a month. And then, like a library, Lecotech lends out its toys for use at home, which is great for a family like the Ransoms.
So many of the toys are much too expensive for you to buy on your own just to see if they want them. And their interests vary. And this way you can borrow the ones and try them out and see what you want to buy or what you don't want to buy.
Now, many of the toys at Lecotech have been adapted for kids with handicaps. Take, for example, this baseball glove. It's got suction cups to help them catch the ball.
And for the Guy family, adaptive toys have made a real difference in Danny's development.
We've seen him reaching for toys more, and that's been really good because he was, because of his lack of movement, he really wasn't trying to reach out and touch things in his environment. But when things are so, they give back so much input when he touches them, he's really been reaching for things and turning to the side instead of just looking forward, and that's been really helpful. We have children with a wide variety of handicaps. We have children who have Down syndrome. We have children with cerebral palsy, spina bifida. We have some emotionally handicapped children. But in Lecotech, we like to think of serving only two kinds of kids, and that's boys and girls.
Still on the subject of handicaps, and the next report, which is coming up soon, takes a look at an artificial limb. Having an artificial hand, which is merely a stand-in for the real thing, helps the patient recover from the shock of losing a limb. But when the prosthesis is usable and aids the patient in everyday life, well, that's obviously the thing to aim for, as we're about to see.
At first glance, you might not notice, but 2 years ago, Castellanzo had an accident which changed her life. She lost most of her left hand and her entire right. What appears to be a hand is a prosthesis.
This makes me feel good. It makes me feel good about myself. Oh, I feel like a woman now. Before I felt like, I don't know.
Cass's prosthesis is not particularly functional. It's not meant to be. This is not a story about an artificial limb that can perform amazing feats. It is a story about a prosthesis considered to be the most lifelike now available.
There's just nothing has been able to duplicate the, well, surrealistic or lifelike element that he has built into these devices. The prostheses made by Dr. Pillay are unrivaled in the world, actually, for their realism.
Thomas Jefferson University Hospital is among 9 U.S. hospitals which offer the Pillay prosthesis. Several times a year, Dr. Jean Pillay and a small staff travel from France to the United States to personally fit dozens of American patients.
You can move now. Good. And can do that.
Today, Cass is back for a new fitting. She wants a prosthesis made for her left hand. Because the limb has some function, the artificial hand will be constructed to allow her to take full advantage of the movement she has. But of most concern to Dr. Pillay is the way the hand will look, what he calls its aesthetic quality.
Suppose if we have a finger amputation, it's necessary to have exactly the same appearance as the other side, with the same details of the skin, the same details of the nail, the color of the nail, the color of the skin.
Creating the final product begins with a sketch. The patient is carefully measured for size and functional ability. A plaster impression serves as the blueprint for construction.
The final and most important stage involves the detail work. With paintbrush in hand, an artist carefully studies the patient's own skin and works to create the most realistic facsimile, down to the pores and placement of the veins. The prostheses should last about 2 years. Made of silicone, they are resistant to tearing, hardening, and burning, and can be repaired.
Not since scientists discovered antibiotics has there been so much excitement about a new class of drugs called colony stimulation or growth factors. They hold the promise of becoming a potent new biological weapon in the war against cancer and perhaps many other diseases. According to research, growth factors boost the body's immune system, giving it extra power to fight infection and disease.
David Arrington had quite a scare. He noticed that every time he'd lightly bump his arm, it would bruise. Within months, he began to bleed internally. At age 78, David was diagnosed with a type of cancer called leukemia.
That was a real trauma for me for a while, because I thought people who had leukemia died right away, so I figured I was about had it.
In fact, David's chances for survival were not very good. He began chemotherapy immediately. While chemotherapy is an effective treatment for cancer, an ongoing challenge facing doctors has been controlling its side effects, which can be as life-threatening as the cancer itself. Chemotherapy not only kills cancer cells, it also attacks bone marrow, which produces blood cells the body needs to fight infection and control bleeding. If too many cells are killed, the body's immune system becomes so weak, doctors are forced to stop chemotherapy. Well, that's exactly the situation David Arrington faced when he agreed to try an experimental treatment called GM-CSF. GM-CSF is made from a protein produced naturally in small doses in the body. When given to cancer patients in large doses, it stimulates the bone marrow to produce large numbers of healthy blood cells.
Now, for the first time in the history of medicine, we have the ability to either prevent or restore the lowering of the blood counts that are produced by chemotherapy. So we should be able to bring back the normal counts in the body so that patients receiving chemotherapy are not highly susceptible to infections or bleeding episodes.
Take a deep breath, Mr. Arrington. One more time. Good.
David Arrington is among a number of leukemia patients treated successfully with GM-CSF. The protein has also shown promise in treating other cancer patients and in people with AIDS. GM-CSF is among a group of newly discovered proteins called growth factors, which many scientists believe will revolutionize cancer treatment.
I think that each system of the body will have its own series of growth factors, which we will eventually learn how to use in cancer. I think we're only touching the tip of the iceberg. I think in the next several years we're going to see a virtual explosion in clinical application and helping just countless numbers of people.
David Arrington is thankful to be among the numbers already helped.
They have told me as far as they can tell I'm cured. I have no signs of leukemia and all my cells are back to normal. I didn't think anyone was ever cured of leukemia, but I'm thankful that I have been.
The human brain has fascinated doctors and scientists for years. The irony is that the human brain can't even begin to understand itself. However, modern-day scientists are taking great strides towards understanding certain processes that take place in this complex and mysterious organ.
Language is that the same parts of our brains work in the same sequence, from when we first see a word to when we say it. To test that, Washington University researchers recorded brain activity with a PET scanner while they had volunteers do simple tasks as words were projected on a video screen in front of them. The PET scanner can contrast areas of light and heavy blood flow in the brain. Those areas working hardest at a task show heaviest blood flow and will stand out as hot spots on the final PET image.
All right, Clara, we're just about ready to start.
First, the test subjects were asked just to read words silently. Then they were asked to repeat the words as they appeared.
Car, bed, lamp, ear, ruler, chisel.
And finally, they had to generate a verb or use for each word flashing by.
Knit, ring, shoot, fish, sing, smoke, watch, cut.
Brain scans were taken from 17 volunteers performing those activities, then later averaged into composite pictures to see what PET imaging would reveal about how our brains process words.
What we've learned that seems new is that, for instance, you can go from a visual idea about a word directly to the part of the brain that processes meaning, that there are what are called parallel pathways. So you can go from vision to meaning or from vision to output without going through any of the intervening steps.
The most striking thing is that we've identified an area in the frontal lobe, in the left frontal lobe, that really hasn't been part of the discussion of language areas at all. We've demonstrated with a number of experiments that it is certainly involved in processing words even if you don't have to speak them. As long as you're manipulating them as words, this area is active.
Fox and Peterson say tests are underway to assess PET's accuracy in finding language areas in epileptics who face brain surgery. If PET pans out, they say such scanning would be a far less invasive preoperative procedure than what surgeons currently use to pinpoint language function areas in the brain.
Something's happening to food in California. No, it's not getting spicier, or is it getting zanier? It's getting smaller as restaurants are introducing the mini vegetable. Is it just another fad, or is it here to stay? Well, producers hope that it's temporary, but most people think it's not.
Tiny vegetables are nothing new. Most of us have been eating tater tots in our TV dinners for years. Oh, but now, though, the trendiest of cooks are taking the bite-sized veggie idea beyond that, dishing up a diminutive harvest of baby corn, cauliflower, squash, and artichokes, most no bigger than a quarter. You a pretty good eater?
Oh, I eat very well.
How many of these do you think it would take to get full?
Oh, probably about 4 bunches.
The Harris Teeter at Cotswold says the baby vegetables are hybrids from where else but California. And though they're teeny-weeny in size, they are not teeny-weeny in price. You could buy 5 pounds of big zucchini for the same price as 1 pound of the midgets. The chef uses a lot of the little veggies, and though they look great on a plate, how about the palate?
I think the flavor is much more intense. I think that, like vegetables at the end of the summer seem to get large and watery and not have as much flavor. And when you're having a squash, which has a very delicate flavor, I think it's much better small.
If you take this trend toward the tiny a step further, you got to figure there's going to be a lot of hungry people around, because if you did the rest of the dinner to scale, that would give you a steak roughly the size of a gumball.
Gardening has always been a relaxing pastime for most people, but it's doubtful that you've ever seen a garden quite like that of Florence Walker's. It's extraordinary, not because of the flowers, shrubs or trees, but of the rocks. And they've got lots of rocks in their garden, and their arrangement is quite unusual.
Yard like no other. Rocks too numerous to count fill the property. There are river rock stairs and hollow thunder eggs everywhere, and quartz and rocks inside of rocks, all making up the yard of 78-year-old Florence Walker.
But this is all natural talent. There's no, he didn't study for it. It's just natural talent.
He is Milton Walker, Florence's husband, who died 4 years ago after spending 23 years building a garden of stone.
Yeah, he would talk to me. Yeah. It was always beyond my imagination. Well, he used to always tell me if I wasn't doing the gardening, he wouldn't have time for the rocks.
In that time, Milton Walker built a rock patio with wave-like patterns and matching rocks laid end to end, and terraced gardens and archways and a mountain range complete with roads, waterfalls, and pools. Perhaps the most beautiful is the fountain with water bringing out the thunder eggs' full color. Then there is the bicentennial tower completed in 1976.
Yeah, I helped him with getting some of the arches up. He had a rope on them, and he'd had me pulling on the rope, snubbing around that rock down there. He was pushing, and I was pulling, and we got him up there.
For Florence Walker, it's a memory book done in stone. But fate wasn't kind. Milton Walker contracted Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, I tried to talk about the rock work to him, and I said, who did it? And he said, I don't know. And I said, you did, and you brought joy to thousands of people. And just for a minute, his face lit up, and then it vanished.
A final irony. Milton Walker died a stranger in the garden he created.
Don't leap out of your seats just yet. We've got one more item to go on Open Window. It's a contest and it involves jumping. And if you might say it was leapfrog, then you'd be correct, because that's literally what it is. It takes a special person with a special kind of talent to train a frog to perform on cue. So let's meet some of these truly unusual people who consider a frog to be man's best friend.
I don't know how to break this to you, Don, but the hardest part is learning how to kiss your frog. For good luck or something, I think. Yeah. I don't know whether he's going to turn into a prince or give you warts. But they claim it makes him jump better. Sure made me jump. Then you got to learn what kind of frog to choose and what kind of magic words to say to him to make him jump.
We like good, long, strong, muscular legs. And we prep them, get them.
Oh, you're talking about the frogs?
Yes. And I yell a lot. I used to jump horses, so I used to say "hut" every time I jumped over.
I wondered what you were yelling there.
It's "hut." That's what I used to do when I used to jump horses.
Hut! Get it! Hut! The only problem with that is I couldn't find a saddle small enough for a bullfrog. So I decided to consult one of the world's leading experts on how to make a frog jump, 7-year-old Brian York of San Jose. Oh, no, I almost forgot that part.
Well, Brian ought to know what he's talking about. You see, last year at this time, he broke the world's record with the longest frog jump in history. Unfortunately, it was a practice jump. Darn it.
You hold them like this and don't let them see you. You just...
Why don't you let them see you?
Because then it's just exactly like scaring a person. You have to sneak up on them to scare them.
Oh, you do?
Or you go like this and then you drop them and then you scream as loud as you can, screaming, go, go. Go! Go! Go!
Well, personally, I still think it was the kiss that did it.
Alas, we've come to the end of the program for tonight, but we do hope that you can join us in a week from now, same station, same place. But before I go, let me first remind you that if you have any particular questions that you'd like to ask about the program, about any program on Channel 2, or if you simply want to voice your opinion, please drop us a line at the following address. Write to Open Window, P.O. Box 30065, Riyadh 11477. Okay, I'll just repeat that for you. That's P.O. Box 30065, Riyadh 11477. And I'd really like to hear from you regarding your opinions and comments. Till then, as always, do take care and bye just now.